Let's finish up with our dice. Just to recap, what we've already set up are the props for dice. We have a title, num dice, max val, and now we have a piece of state. In the slides, I called it values. Clearly, I forgot about that because over here I called it numbers. Values would work too. And then we have our on click, which re-rolls the dice, gives us new numbers. It's hideous, but it is working. Now let's talk about the die component, which we're going to add in. Of course, we don't have to do this. We never have to break things into separate components, but it's a matter of doing things the React-y way. It makes sense. It cleans up our code, although this is still pretty short, but it's just a nice demonstration of splitting things up. So our die component is going to be a stateless component, and it's just going to be passed a number. That's it. All it needs to know is the number it should display. We'll give it some styles, no state, no events. That's it. So let's define it. Let's make a die component, die.js, die. And then we'll import React from React. Then we can define our die component, and it will be passed some prop. We can call it value, val, number. Let's go with val. And we'll just destructure that. It's the only prop we need at the moment. Then we'll return a div, and we'll put the val in there, and we'll probably give this die a class name of die, which doesn't exist yet. And then we will export default die. All right, now in our dice component, we will import die from ./die. And then here, where we're mapping our numbers, we're now going to map to a die component. So die, and then we need to pass in that prop, which we called val. So val here will be num. That's what we named the parameter for map. We're passing each number through under the prop of val. So let's see if it works now. Page loads, and it still works great. Okay. Quickly, I'll add in some styles. So for my die component, I'll import a style sheet that doesn't exist yet, ./die.css, and I'll make that die.css. All right, so I've given the die class a couple of styles, a background color, color of white for the text, a width, a height, padding on all sides, or just on the top, sorry, text align center, a margin on the right side, font weight bold, and font size slightly larger. So now we end up with these green boxes representing a die, and at the beginning, the way that we designed it is that we start out with no values, so we have an array full of undefineds. We're passing undefined as val, and that allows us to have these die boxes that haven't been rolled yet. Now, if you didn't want that, then you could roll dice and create an array that you pass in with random dice values. Okay, so now I roll, and that's working. I'm also going to add a couple styles to my dice component. So import ./dice.css, and then I'll make that file dice.css, and I've got some styles in here where I'm expecting a dice class. So I'm going to return a div, the class name of dice, and that will give us some basic styles, little border around it. I'm also going to wrap my dice here, the actual dice components, in a div just like that, to give myself a little spacing, just take up a block. And lastly, we're not displaying the title, which was something that we were supposed to do. Go back to the initial render. Oh, where are you? Here we are. We're supposed to display the title up top. So we'll do that inside the dice component, maybe an h2, and then display title, which is coming from the props. It's been destructured. And we end up with that right there. I don't know about that color. I think I'll just go back to black. Text align center is fine, but let's just leave it at that. All right, so now we can roll and we get our numbers. I can make another instance of dice. This one I won't pass any props into. And why don't I pass a title to this one? Title equals, how about roll me? There we go. Our title shows up here. We can roll. Here we're getting 6 dice, and each one goes from 1 to 20. These go from 1 to 6. Now that that's working, let's talk about why we structured it this way. So we have two components, ignoring our app, die and dice. And we have the state all being kept track of. The only state that exists is in the parent, the dice component. Some of you might be thinking, well, couldn't I put a piece of state in the die so I could have value as a piece of state in the individual die component that changes? And yes, you could do that, but then how would this work when we click the button that should re-roll and change the state for every other die on the page? If the state is not controlled by the parent component, then if it's only in here, but the button doesn't exist in this component, we have one button that is outside of the die components, it's in the dice component, how are we going to be able to update the state in 4 or 10 or 20 child components? React does not really work that way. We don't have a way of updating state downwards, so from a parent being able to affect the state of a child. It goes the other way. It's this upward data flow. It's also called lifting state up, where we move state up to the highest level that we need it at. So if we have a button that is going to roll all of these dice, we need to have access to that state somewhere that the button is going to be able to trigger a function on. So putting it on the individual die doesn't work. We put it on the parent, the dice component that we've created. So in general, when you're designing your applications and you have child components, you might have 3 or 4 levels of nested child components, often even more, and you might struggle to figure out where the state needs to go. Well, generally, what I do at least is put the state where I think I need it first, and then as I'm writing the app, I might lift it up. I might move it up to a parent if I realize I have another component that needs to have access to the state, or if I need that state all together for some reason, and need it in an array rather than separate pieces of state, then I would move it up. Long story short, figuring out where to put state can take time. Overall in React, there's this idea of having state higher up in the component hierarchy, and then you can pass it down as props to your child components. We defined a stateless component, which is die.js. It just exists to display a piece of state from a parent, but it displays it as a prop in the actual die component. So next up, I'm going to show you another example. We're going to go back to that Circles app that we built a couple videos ago and talk about how we might want to structure it if we made some changes.